Hi there, and welcome to episode 56 of the GCSAA Podcast, presented in partnership with the fine folks at Envu. I'm your host, Scott Hollister, the editor-in-chief of GCSAA's Golf Course Management Magazine, and I appreciate you joining us for this episode. A little over 1 year ago, Hurricane Ian made landfall along the Gulf Coast of Florida as one of the strongest hurricanes to ever impact the contiguous United States, a Category 5 storm that resulted in over 150 fatalities in the state of Florida alone. Fort Myers Beach, and Sanibel Island in southwest Florida bore the brunt of Ian's wrath, with the destruction sparing very few, including the area's golf industry. Just a few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to visit Sanibel and spend a day with a pair of local superintendents, Roy Jones from the Dunes Golf and Tennis Club and Kyle Sweet, CGCS from the Sanctuary Golf Club, to talk about their experiences before, during, and after Ian, what life on the island has been like over the past year, and what lessons they've taken away from the experience. I can tell you firsthand that the signs of Ian's impact are still everywhere you look, a full year removed from the storm, but the island is on the comeback trail, and that includes both of these golf courses and their maintenance teams. Even if you're from a part of the country where hurricanes aren't a fact of life, I think there are plenty of takeaways about resiliency, about disaster preparedness, and about communities coming together in the face of great challenges for you in this episode. Hope you'll feel the same way after listening to these tales from the path of Hurricane Ian, as told by two superintendents who lived it, Roy Jones and Kyle Sweet. A quick reminder that in addition to the traditional audio version of the GCSAA podcast that you can find on most major podcast platforms, you can also discover video versions on GCSAA's YouTube channel and on GCSAA TV. This episode was recorded in person, so it is audio only, but the video versions will feature photos and videos showing the aftermath of Hurricane Ian on Sanibel Island, so you can check those out if you're interested. And with that, it's time to go. This is episode 56 of the GCSAA podcast, featuring Roy Jones and Kyle Sweet sharing their experiences with Hurricane Ian. As we record this episode of the podcast, it is September 28th, 2023. And 1 year ago today, and I was telling some people that I was doing this, and I said it was like total dumb luck. I don't know if that's lucky or not, considering the topic of conversation for today, but just complete coincidence that I happen to be in Florida and that we could set this up 1 year ago today, because we are sitting in the clubhouse at the Dunes Golf and Tennis Club. Roy, how many have members had a chance to enjoy this space at all? Have you?
No, we haven't actually opened to membership yet. They've been in and out, but we're not going to open fully to members until the landscaping in the front is finished. Okay. That's what the owner wants us to do, and so that's what we're doing.
Yeah, so we are in the clubhouse of the Dunes Golf and Tennis Club on Sanibel Island, which was, I don't want to say ground zero, because I know we were talking earlier, all up and down the coast, there were impacts from Hurricane Ian. But I want to take this opportunity. We've told the story in the pages of GCM, and I think most listeners have probably seen stories of superintendents who were impacted, both personally and professionally, by the storm. But happy to be joined today by, already introduced, Roy Jones. Roy's the superintendent here at the Dunes, a 22-year GCSA member, and also Kyle Sweet, certified superintendent from the Sanctuary Golf Club here on the island, 32-year member. Somewhere I read you're a Florida Master Naturalist. What is that?
Yeah, Scott. So Florida Master Naturalist program is a program that's put out by University of Florida. It's a continuing ed program that basically studies the habitats throughout the state of Florida. Here in Florida, we have wetland communities, we have upland communities, and we have coastal communities. And at the sanctuary, I have the opportunity to do a lot of tours for people, wildlife tours, native plant tours, things like that. And the Master Naturalist program was something I was interested in. Some of the people that I work with at SCCF, Ding Darling, and the city of Sanibel had participated in the program. So it's a matter of sequences of, I think there are 12-week sessions, 1 day a week for about 12 weeks and 3 separate times. And I was very fortunate to be able to do that program in 1 year And the club supported me to do that because of my work I do with the members and the community on tours. Yeah, so I'm a certified Florida Master Naturalist, and which basically means I have a pretty good understanding of all the ecological systems throughout the state of Florida.
That's awesome. That's a pretty unique.
I made sure to throw on the business card. CGCS is first.
That's right.
Then Florida Master Naturalist. Thank you very much.
We really appreciate that for you doing that. But
absolutely.
Again, I happen to be in Florida on business and had an opportunity to do this. Kyle and I have been going back and forth for a little bit just to share the stories of what you guys experienced here. And I know, again, there are a lot of superintendents, a lot of GCSA members who were impacted by Ian, impacted by other storms that have been either along the Gulf Coast, along the Atlantic coast. But I thought that this would also be instructive to superintendents all over because of the nature of golf. It's an outdoor sport. It's subject to the whims of Mother Nature. You can be where I'm from in Kansas, and you can have a course impacted by severe weather, tornadoes, whatnot. Out west, courses affected by wildfires. So some of the things that you guys have gone through and battled as you've tried to come back from that, I think will be applicable all over to superintendents all over the country, even if a hurricane is not in their future. I want to start off and just introduce folks to you too. Roy, I was going to ask if you're a native Floridian, but if anyone heard you speak earlier, I think that one's out of, we don't have to ask that question, but where'd you grow up? What was your path like to a career in golf?
So, it's a weird one, Scott. So I started off, my father was in the British military, traveled around Europe, lived in various parts of Europe. And so to give me a better education versus the British Army system, I went to boarding school in Cumbria, in the Lake District of England. Really good time. But when I got to go and decide what I wanted to do in college, my initial thought was, I don't want to do college. I want to go in the Army and follow my father's footsteps. So I went down, 19 years of age, doing basic training, and kind of blew my knee out in basic training. And then I was aimless for 6-8 months. My parents said, you can't live with us unless you're working. So I went back to where I was in boarding school and hanging around with some friends, and we just decided, let's go to college. So one of the local colleges was doing a course they called it leisure management. So it was basically leisure facility management, like big leisure centers in the UK, that kind of thing. 2 years of doing that. Once I got done, I realized I don't want to do that. That's just not my interest. So talking to the careers counselor, there is a college course at the University of Lancaster at one of the agriculture colleges, Myesco College, dealing with sports turf. And I was like, oh, sports turf, that sounds interesting. I'd always played rugby my whole life, interested in soccer. I was like, oh, I'll go maintain a football pitch or a rugby pitch. Brilliant, good stuff. Get to the college, go through the interview process, talking to the lecturer or the senior lecturer who some guys in GCSAA might know, a guy called Martin Jones. He's been around quite a bit. And he was like, this is more golf orientated than anything. The college had a little 6-hole golf course that we did all work on and stuff. So I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot, whatever. I've got nothing to lose right now. So I went through college. It was a 3-year college course. And the second year of the course was a 1-year work placement. I did my work placement right here at the Dunes back in 1994.
Wow.
It's a big full circle for me to come back and do this. But yeah, finished the 1-year placement here, which happened to be when the Dunes last renovated, the summer of 95. So I went through that renovation with the Dunes, went back, finished college. During my time here at the Dune, I met my future ex-wife. Came back to America for that.
That sounds like a country music song.
Yeah, it's not too far off, to be honest.
Oh boy.
So when I go back to the States, originally I wanted to come back and work at the Dunes, but the superintendent at the time says, he told me, he goes, I've got this like boot camp kind of thing that he does. All his employees have to start at the very bottom, no matter if they have education or if they've got work experience. And I was just like, yeah, I don't really want to come and work for $7 an hour. So I happened to land at an irrigation tech job at a course down in Bonita at Pelican's Nest. Did that for about 18 months and then landed my first assistance job at Gulf Harbor with WCI when they did their renovation in 98, I believe was that one. And then I made the huge mistake of chasing money, which I should have never done. I took a superintendent's position with a company I really should never have. I was out in the wilderness for 10 years working for them. When that finally broke down after the big housing crash in 08, so that led to my job being eliminated in 2011. I ended up back here as an assistant superintendent under a guy called Mitch Miller, and he got my career back on track. He let me be who I could be, and he showed me how golf maintenance can be a really good career, because I was getting burnt out on it at that point. And so 12 years later, I am still here, but now I'm running the show. So
that's great. Full circle.
Full circle, yeah.
How is clearly Florida and the UK maintaining turf is a completely different game.
Yeah.
How big the adjustment period? Was it a slap in the face, a shock to the system at first? Or?
It wasn't too bad. Coming straight from college, and obviously I'd spent a year here at the Dunes learning warm season grasses. So there wasn't that much adjustment when I got here, especially since I didn't jump straight into a management role. I worked my way up through irrigation tech, spraying, and then on to assistant. Now, trying to think about if I was going to go back the other way, because my current wife has always said we want to go north, and I'm just like, I don't know if I want to start back on cool season again, because it's taken me a long time to learn this one. But the transition wasn't too bad. I've had good tutors along the way. I've worked with some really special people that have helped me out, and now I can lean on people like Kyle if I still don't know what I'm, especially in the transition to Paspalum.
You're right.
I mean, this is my first time really working with Paspalum. As a young kid, you're out there, 19, 22, 21 years old, fear. Right. Warm season, who cares? Cool season, who cares? I'll go wherever the work is.
Right.
Now I'd be a little bit more measured if I was asked to change.
The wisdom of time.
Yes, indeed.
Kyle, are you a lifelong Floridian? How did you get to Sanibel and into a career in golf?
My story is probably not as interesting as Roy's here, world traveler. No, so I am actually not a true Florida native. I was born in Plattsburgh, New York. We won't say what year, but it was a long time ago. My folks moved down. Both my parents were school teachers, and they moved down to booming Florida in 1973. Wow. So I was a young 3-year-old at the time. And I do have two younger brothers. One was born just before they moved, and the other was born about 10 years later in the Dade City area. But so we moved down to Florida. My parents were school teachers. We lived in a little town, Zephyr Hills, and it was small then. Now it's almost like an extension of Tampa. It's quite big, but very seasonal. And interestingly about Zephyr Hills is it had a lot of golf courses, because of the seasonality and the retirement communities. At the ripe age of 12 years old, I had a little municipal golf course down the street, and one of my best buddies I was growing up with happened to be working there parking carts a couple nights a week for free golf. So we would go play free golf. He decided that football was in his future, so he was going to play football. So since he was going to play football and I wasn't, he's asked me if I wanted to do his job. Yeah. So lo and behold, I was like, sure. So I would go down a few nights a week, and I would park the carts and assemble the carts together and things, and I'd go pick the range, oftentimes with one hand out the side of the cart, grabbing them up and throw them in a barrel. But at 12 years old, I basically worked for free golf. And then at about 16, and I did that for a few years. And at about 16, my parents were gracious enough to get me my first little car. I said, well, if I'm going to work, I got to be able to make a few bucks. So I did a construction and grow in at a golf course that my brother is currently the superintendent at, called Silverado in Zephyr Hills. Okay. And I picked up rocks and sticks and followed behind the tillers and followed behind the graders and hand shoveled 37M bunker sand and did what we did at 16. And what was interesting was how it works out. I had the ability to take some vacation time. The people that I was working for were fantastic there. And so I had to earn some vacation. And the GTE Suncoast Classic was in Tampa Palms. And I had the opportunity to reach out to Greg Plotner, who I owe a lot to. And I said, hey, I'm going to take a week vacation. I'd like to come work for you for the tournament. You probably thought I was crazy. Yeah. But I did. So I took a week's vacation and I volunteered at the tournament. And once I really got a taste of that, at that level, and such a high maintenance level, and the PGA Tour, I'm cutting putting green cups, and you got Trevino and Palmer and all these guys around you. And it was like, okay, I think this is what I really want to do. So I left the little golf course of Silverado and to work at Tampa Palms. Under Greg's tutor leadership, I was able to do irrigation and IPM. And eventually, the West Coast Golf Course Superintendents Association sent me to Lake City on a 3-year scholarship. Wow. That was awesome because I was not financially able to leave home and go off to college. It was like a dream come true. So they gave me the opportunity to do that. And my first internship in Lake City, I was at Saddlebrook.
Okay.
And I worked for Chuck and Al there at Saddlebrook. My second internship, I was the first hourly employee of the Whirlwoods of Golf in Brooksville. And Bob Wagner and Steve Ritzko I worked with there, as well as Tim Seaver. And I hate to say I've never interviewed for a job, but I've never really interviewed for a job because I met Tim Seaver at Hooters in Jacksonville at FTGA in 1992. And he said, hey, I got this gig down on Sanibel. I'd known Tim. He'd been up in the Central Florida market for a number of years. And he said, I want you to come down. I want you to come down and see me. And I knew Sanibel as like the place that my parents went to with my younger brother.
Right.
While the rest of us left the house, my younger brother got all these vacations, right? I came down in December of 1992. I met Tim. I said, this is amazing. It's going to be a great golf course. I had worked Arthur Hills, had also done Tampa Palms.
Sure.
So I saw a lot of similarities there, and here I was. So my last semester at Lake City, I knew I was going to be coming here to Sanibel at the sanctuary. I came down as the assistant. And I've spent a little time away. I did a project in Fort Myers called Westminster in 1996 and 97. But I went back to the sanctuary as the golf superintendent in May of 1997. So I'm getting ready to celebrate my 27th year there at the sanctuary as a superintendent.
Wow. That's a great run. You beat me in my 25 years with GCSAA.
Yeah. When I say you said 32 years as a member, I was like, I can't be that old. But
you are not the first one.
But I guess I must have joined. I joined probably the year before Lake City in that realm. But I did want to throw out that I did go to Lake City with a lot of great guys, and there's such a great group of superintendents down here in Southwest Florida from Lake City, from all over the world.
Right.
I mean, we have 140 golf courses here between Lee and Collier County. So certainly glad to represent.
Yeah, I get that a lot, and the membership does carry over from your student days. So if you're a student member, and then you become an assistant member and everything. So, well, two different stories to get to this place in time. With that kind of run, Kyle, I'm sure that Ian was not the first storm that you had to deal with. What was your previous experience like in terms of dealing with tropical weather, learning how to prepare a golf course, learning how to recover once a storm had passed?
So interestingly, growing up in Central Florida, I think we had some close calls in the 80s, probably the 70s and 80s, but I don't remember any big hurricane events. Certainly probably would have remembered those. But we did have a significant hurricane here in 2004, Hurricane Charlie.
Okay, yeah.
So Hurricane Charlie was a smaller storm than Ian, but it was Category 4, I believe, when it got to us. And what was interesting was one of the things we had always had at the club was a pretty thorough plan to get ready in case. So Hurricane Charlie taught us some pretty interesting lessons with regards to preparation, what we needed to do, timing. As far as timing, not only to get the golf course ready, but if we have a staff of 20, to make sure that your people are actually being able to take care of themselves too.
Sure.
And you don't put them in a dangerous situation getting on and off the island because we got to cross, about 3 mile stretch over the causeway, over the water. Hurricane Charlie was a huge preparation, a huge test to get ready for Hurricane Ian. And then the aftermath was similar but different. Hurricane Charlie came through at a very fast speed. And it traveled so fast that it actually made a turn and it came into Southwest Florida kind of last minute. It was moving quite fast. However, Hurricane Ian was moving quite slow.
Yeah. And
it packed a big wallop, not only with the wind, but with the storm surge. And anybody from a resident to us as employees of our employers would say that the surge made all the difference in the world to what the aftermath was,
right,
with the result of the damage and then the recovery after the fact. So the fact that salt water came, and how much water do you have in your place here?
We're about 6 feet inside the building.
So everything that we're looking at out here in Roy's beautiful growing going on was underwater, except probably tips of the greens, tops of the bunkers, what have you.
Right.
My place, probably 75% of it was underwater, but whether you're 6 feet or 6 inches, you're still under salt water.
Sure.
Some of the big things that we really knew to do was to, of course, clear the golf course of anything that was going to blow away.
Right.
As well as make arrangements around the facility to move equipment in, get rid of anything that could be flying away. And I was thinking about that as I was over here now, is what would we have done different as we prepared for the storm? And the fact that we went through both hurricanes and I was able to go back to the shop and roll the doors up tells me that we really couldn't have done a whole lot different.
Right.
In both situations, we had areas of the metal building that were blown through and blown out. But at the same time, the building stayed intact. Mm-hmm. And fortunately for me, I'm at such an elevation that's the highest native elevation of the island. I was actually able to open up my doors and get my equipment and go back to work. Unfortunately,
not so much on
for Roy, and not so much on his end, because the elevation of this end of the island is quite low, i.e. the homes on stilts out here.
Yeah.
So for us, the big thing is all the preparation that goes into preparing the golf course and the facilities, and I'm talking about antennas off the top of the clubhouse for your irrigation system, for your communication system. I'm talking about lightning detection system items. I'm talking about lake aerators, like aeration systems being removed from the golf course. All the waste baskets tipped over, at least, if not brought in. Flag sticks, of course, brought. All the things, things that you could leave tee markers out there, they're probably not going to blow away. Cleaning the place and then getting everything together. And then I think the big deal for us on this time was getting all of our electronic equipment up on our desks.
Yeah.
Getting things off the floor onto our desk. And in my situation, actually taking my computer home, bringing it, my home's on 12-foot stilts here on the island. So bringing my tower home and putting it somewhere where, just in case. And we did those things. And a lot of us as managers did those things. And at the end of the day, we had something to grab hold of when we got back. Now, we didn't have power for 2.5 months. Yeah. So we couldn't use some of those things. But at the same time, we took a lot of steps to prepare. And there's a lot of hurricane preparedness programs that I'm sure people would be able to share up and down the Gulf Coast. Yeah. And even on the East Coast.
Yeah, and I mean, we've written about that in GCM before, and I've had the opportunity to talk to other guys, and there's a fairly similar game plan. Roy, I'm assuming that as you prepared for this, clearly the UK gets its fair share of nasty weather. It's different, obviously, than what you experienced. You've been here a while. Did you feel like you had prepared yourself, your crew, your golf course as best you could for Ian?
Yeah, so I didn't go through Charlie on Sanibel. I was up in Northport, so we really didn't suffer much damage with Charlie. But we went through Irma in 2017, which wasn't really much. We had a few trees down. We lost power for a few days. It wasn't a big deal. But part of that was realizing that you need certain items to come through afterwards. So generators, chainsaws, stuff like that, two-cycle stuff that you're going to need to help clean up, utility vehicles, all that stuff. When we first saw that Ian was potentially going to make an impact on Southwest Florida, we got together with staff. We started executing our plan. Just like Kyle, everything that was loose and not tied down was brought in. All the pool furniture was put away in the pool bathrooms. All the patio furniture, everything was brought in. Every piece of equipment was fueled up, checked, made sure it was in running condition. Generators made ready to go, and pumps, and they were all staged at the front of the building. So they'd be the first thing to get out and get going. Chainsaws, they were stacked on shelves. We thought we were doing good. And we set it up so that all the staff was gone on the Tuesday before the storm hit, was Wednesday afternoon, or midday Wednesday. So there was no staff in here on Tuesday, but I did actually come in on a Tuesday morning because Monday night I'm like, gosh, I forgot to pick my computer up on the floor because it sits on the floor under my desk. And I was like, all right. So I came on island and I just took a troll around, made sure everything was good. We duct taped all the satellite boxes up best we could. Antenna was down just like Kyle. I go in my office, I unplug the computer, sit on top of my desk. I'm like, oh, I must remember to back up the irrigation computer. So I got the backup, put the USB, sat it on my desk next to my computer, lock the door, go home. And so obviously when I came back in, we didn't really know what was going on until we walked in. There had been a few people that had come and landed, and we'd actually had one employee that stayed on island during the storm, and she came out the next day and said everything's destroyed, blah, blah, blah. And we're like, yeah, okay, can't be that bad. Yeah. But then we started seeing some of the news pictures, like the causeway was gone, And we're like, oh, maybe this was a bit more significant. I live, as a crow flies, 6 miles inland, and we got 6 foot of storm surge. I lost both my cars. Luckily, we're on the second floor of an apartment building, so our apartment didn't get bothered, but there was 4 to 5 feet in the apartments below. So that's when it all started to sink in. I'm like, and I'm starting to think to myself, I hope my stuff in my office is okay so we can get going, get chopped. Right. We knew there'd be trees down. We saw the pictures. And then when we finally got back on island and when we get to the maintenance facility, I'm like, it's all gone. Everything was gone. We looked at the equipment. We were like 7 or 8 days after the storm before we came back on the island. The vehicles that we left with batteries connected, the terminals were already rusting off.
Wow.
And we're just like, and we've been lucky enough where our owners have helped us get into a lease program with our equipment. All leased equipment, it's all the latest gen, the 3320 hybrid, triplexes from Toro. Anything that was electronic was trashed.
Wow.
I know that the superintendent over at the other golf course on the island, his mechanic worked wonders over there, but they had some older equipment that wasn't as computer-based as this modern stuff. Yeah. And they got their stuff running, and we're sat here going, I got nothing. I literally had 2 weed eaters and a stick edger or something left over. That's all that was left. Everything was gone. We took the chainsaws apart, soaked the heads down in WD-40 and tried it, and there's just nothing was going to work. And that was the biggest lesson I've learned. It's just you cannot prepare for what Mother Nature. You can do what you think is right, but beyond picking up everything that you have at the shop and moving it to high ground, we didn't expect 6-8 feet of water in our shop. Nobody, I don't think anybody did, really.
No, the surge was something that we hadn't dealt with before, and people on the island, we didn't give it proper credit.
No.
And I'm a self-professed weather geek. I'm always interested in that stuff, and when storms are coming, I'm paying attention. And you're watching some of the computerized graphics, like the Weather Channel will show, and but it makes sense. They'll have a guy, I'm a 6-foot guy. Look, here's what the surge would look like in this neighborhood, and here's 10 feet, and here's 14 feet. And obviously, it illustrates how powerful it can be. And they always say that water is just such a powerful thing in storms like that. Kyle, did you stay on the island during the storm?
Yes, actually. We were going to stay at our home, and we had a small generator, but it wasn't going to be really enough to power the home at all. We had an opportunity to stay at one of our members' homes out near the club. And the person had called me and said, hey, if you're there, that's great because you can actually help me understand what's going on in my home. At 1:30 in the morning, my wife decides to make the decision, oh, yeah, we should go. So we wake up, we pack up a couple pairs of shorts, shoes, just almost like an overnight bag. And so we drive over there. And interestingly, by that time, the wind was already blowing. Mm-hmm. It was already raining. This is Tuesday night.
Yeah.
And on the way there, I go headlight to headlight with a truck coming to me right with a big tree laying in the middle of the road, right outside of where the home is that we were going to stay at, which is right next to the golf course. So fortunately, my guy, John, that runs Great White, we get out, we move this tree. I don't think either one of us could have done it by ourselves, but we did it together. So we move this tree at 1:30 in the morning. We get to the place. We settle in. Everything's fine. We're getting ready. And we go to bed that night. Of course, we get up the next morning, and it's inclement weather for starters. But we stayed there because he had a full generator. So as soon as the power went out, which it didn't take too long, we had full power. We had TV. We had everything, gas, cooking, and everything. So we actually had it quite nice, despite the storm bearing on us for the storm. But I wouldn't have changed a thing in the fact that we stayed there, because once the storm was over, I was able to walk out and literally walk half a mile down the road to my maintenance facility and had golf carts, loader, tractor, all the other things to get going for the community at the club.
Sure, yeah.
Start clearing the roads. And we cleared part of Sandcap Road, which is a main road going from the south end of the island to the north end of the island with a loader. Me and a pack of guys with carts and chainsaws. Members of the club, and just community members. If I would have been at my home, all of our cars got destroyed, of course, but I would have been sitting there wondering what to do. I wouldn't have had any way to get anywhere.
Yeah.
So fortunately at the club, I was able to be there and my wife says, happens again, we're leaving. And I said, I'm probably going to stay at the club. but I'm glad that we stayed there. And I'm glad that we stayed there also for the experience of it all. And I wouldn't put my family in harm's way at all. And we weren't in harm's way because it was like opening the doors to a different world once we left the home. A lot of the homes that were built here on Sanibel, the newer construction, and Roy can attest, most of them did fantastic despite the wind and the surge. Older homes that weren't built to certain specifications didn't do so well. The home that I was in, other than the exterior ceiling fans getting pretty much blown off the ceilings, you pressure wash and you would never know that the home went through a storm.
Yeah, I got here a little bit early and took a drive around the community and was surprised at the number of, obviously, lots of new roofs. Yep. You can see that. Lots of construction still going on to some of them, but I was surprised there was as many homes and people looking like they've taken up residence once again here on the island. There's a handful throughout here that clearly people have had to either abandon or just haven't had the resources to rebuild. When did you, Kyle, when did you learn that the causeway had been damaged to the point that was not a way on or off the island? So
we had power despite everything.
Yeah.
And we had satellite TV. So we turned, like the day of the storm, and the wind was coming through, it lasted all day. It just blew and blew. And I was like, this is not good. And of course there was surge water downstairs and everything going. So that night it was just like, look, there's nothing we can do. We can't. So we just went to bed. Even the wind was blowing, we just went to bed. We got up the next morning and turned on the TV, and here they were. Like there was three breaches, I believe, in the causeway.
Yeah, one at each.
And at that point in time, they're saying it could be months before the access was available to the island. So here we are thinking, oh no, what are we going to do? And then all these ideas start running through your head about people. They're talking about emergency services having to barge over. And if you're on the island, what are you going to do? You can't get out. And so rule number one was like, okay, everybody needs to be safe. We just need to be very careful of what we're doing here. And then just have a discussion about what the reality was going to be for us now there. And it seemed like we had a lot to take care of here. I still had to come down to this end of the island to our home and see what was going on there. Yeah. So I was concerned about a lot of home-based stuff before I was worried about the causeway. But it was scary to think that we were landlocked on the island. Yeah. Yeah, and I find it interesting. You said basically you open your doors to a whole new world, and I'm sure that's what it was. We're going to take a quick break here, pay some bills, and then we will come back with more with Kyle Sweet and Roy Jones. We'll get back to this episode in a minute, but now a word from Envu, which is committed to working with golf course superintendents to accomplish great things on the course every day. The company has the expertise and innovative solutions to help you navigate turf challenges year-round while keeping your course playable and beautiful. If you have a Poa annua infestation in warm season turf, you might be tempted to apply herbicides as soon as fall begins. But the species has a wide germination window, so you can get better results if you wait until later in the season. And if you follow the Pre-3 program from Envu, you'll control Poa seedlings, plus prevent germination of seeds that haven't emerged yet. You'll also see control of late germinating winter annual broadleaf weeds like henbit and chickweed. As a bonus, tank mixing these products delivers built-in resistance control from multiple modes of action. It's easier to schedule things to less activity on the course, and the strategy gives more flexibility around fall tropical storms. Greens and fairways often take center stage, but the rest of the grounds also need your attention to stay beautifully weed-free. For weeds in non-turf areas, applying a pre-emergence herbicide in the fall is the best way to reduce winter weeds. Spectacle Flow and Spectacle G offer multiple benefits beyond broad-spectrum, long-lasting control. They can be used in a wide range of planted and mulched areas, and the non-staining formula is safe for pavers and sidewalks. Spectacle Flow is ideal for mulched areas. Plus, it can be tank mixed with non-selective herbicides to clean up existing weeds. Spectacle G has a low use rate that's perfect for low-growing or dormant ornamentals. No matter which you use, you'll see up to 6 months of control for cost and labor savings.
Plan to stock up and save on these products and many more for 2024 through the newly improved My Envu Rewards program. From October 1st through December 4th, Envu is running its Fall Solutions program for members. You'll get great deals on a wide variety of the turf products that keep your course thriving all season long. Log in or join to start saving today at rewards.envu.us. To learn more about the agronomic solutions that can help you keep troublesome weeds out of your turf, contact your Envu representative or go to us.envu.com/golf. Always read and follow label instructions, and remember that not all products are registered for use in all states. Once again, our thanks to everyone at Envu for their support of the GCSAA podcast. And now, let's get back to this episode. All right, we're back with Kyle Sweet and Roy Jones. We're talking about their experiences here on Sanibel Island with Hurricane Ian. So before the break, you guys, we were talking about some preparations, where you were when the storm hit. Kyle, what were you... First impressions when you got, we'll start on the golf course. You talked a little bit about your personal home on the island as well, but when you saw it, how did it compare to maybe some of the other storm damage that you had seen? And was it something you're like, this is unlike anything I've seen before? What was your initial reaction?
The wind damage from Hurricane Charlie, I thought it looked very similar. In other words, when you drove by like an access path that would go to a golf hole, it was just branches everywhere. You just couldn't even see to get through there. You obviously had to plow your way through. What was different was like there were dead fish in the bunkers. Literally, the bunkers were strewn with dead fish. Wow. The soft path areas, we have quite a bit of a screening soft path, cart path. In some areas, there were 3 to 4 foot gullies that went for 100, maybe 200 feet, where the water came in and then the water had to find a way out. So when it did, it took everything with it. And our soils here on the island are very sandy, full of seashells, and these soils will migrate really easily. They're relatively loose. So when I saw some of that and I realized the whole cart paths had sunk because water had come over the top of them and then eroded underneath them, and you just got a whole different perspective on the damage. Chainsaws and chippers were normal, but the other was not normal. Immediately, a lot of my first communications to the club, well, first of all, we had very limited cell phone coverage out here. Yeah, we had to climb on top of the clubhouse. We were here for 5 days, basically. I was at the club for 5 days before any other people were there. But we had to climb on top of the clubhouse. Fortunately, we broke in. Yeah, that's right. And, we broke into the clubhouse, and we climbed on top of the clubhouse, and that's where we got cell signal. This evening, as the anniversary of the storm, I have several friends on the island that are going to be like, remember us on top of the clubhouse at the sanctuary? It was great. But we went on top of the clubhouse, and then we could get texts out, some phone, some voice calls. But my immediate communication was like, look, we have a significant amount of damage and erosion around the edges of the golf course where the water came on, and then the water left. And when it left, or the wave action hit some sides, that it created a lot of damage. We have a lot of irrigation lines exposed. We have irrigation heads strewn across the edge of the golf course that have to be... So just the magnitude of that was pretty impactful right away. And then you want to call it the slime?
Oh.
Yeah. So with the surge came a high amount of fines that were collected, I guess, as the storm surge came across the island. Roy probably had it worse than I did, but in areas like on my south end of the golf course where we got significant surge and this slime, this really slippery, slimy clay, not what we're used to. We're a sand-based environment here. But the slime, I'll just call it,
it stuck to everything. Just
was everywhere. Yeah. And it coated the grass, it coated the soil. So when you got out and you looked at it, you're like, well, that's totally different. And that's not something we'd ever dealt with before either. And it was on the roads, it was on the fairways, I've got photos of it all along the edge of my 12th green. It almost looked like a white algae, basically. Wow. And I'm like, oh, how are we going to get rid of that? I don't see this in any textbooks. But I think that was the thing, is I had to notify my guys that we're dealing with something here that we haven't dealt with before.
Yeah.
And, looking back, we knew what to do to remediate it or to fix it or to get it under control. It was just a whole different layer versus what we'd had in the past. Yeah.
Yeah. And Roy, you were off the island. When were you first able to get back? How did you get back? I'm assuming by boat, but how long did that take? And were you ready just to turn around and go back?
Yeah.
Once you got here?
I think the owners had actually had somebody either from their insurance company or one of the owners had somebody helicopter in, because they have multiple properties on the island. And so they gave us a rough idea. So then about 5 days after the storm, I'd already had power back at the apartment, and so had most of the people that lived in that area. So my general manager, myself, the head pro, and a couple of the key players here at the golf course, we all got on a Zoom call. We tried to figure out how to get back on the island. Now, luckily, we just hired a guy who had a boat. The golf pro called him up and said, "Hey, can we use your boat and get across the island?" We got that figured out. Exactly a week after the storm hit, we took off from Iona, just across the river, or across the bay there from the island, and came over on a boat. There was 12 of us, I believe, the first day. We came in and we tied up about a half a mile away from here, and we had to walk from there to the golf course. The first thing that struck me when you get beyond looking at the devastation was it was eerily quiet. There was no bird sound. You couldn't hear, there's no generators, no chainsaws. It was just so quiet. And this is a week post-storm.
Wow.
So we had to walk about a half a mile. We come down the road, and then there's a cut through just behind the clubhouse over there. And as we come through the cut through, and we get our first glimpse of the golf course, and it reminded me of, what's the movie, Full Metal Jacket, when they're going through and they're in Vietnam, and you see the bombed out buildings and you see the palm trees with it there. That thing was filmed in England, strangely enough. You see the bombed out buildings and stuff, and I was like, this just looks like a war zone. Broken trees, everything was brown, and I was just like, and this is just crazy. And I was in shock, honestly. I'd seen the TV pictures, and you see the cameras that go over the island, and you're like, okay. But until you actually get down there and you're physically on the ground and you experience what is there, I'm just like, I was just still lost for words. Like Kyle, there was dead fish everywhere, and we had dead pelicans, dead turtles all over the place.
A lot of dead birds.
Yeah,
a lot of birds too that probably were just hung up in the wind.
Yeah.
Several dead birds.
And then we come walking through here. In the middle of the putting green, which is right there, was a brand new golf hat from Sanibel Island Golf Club, which is the other golf club, which is, 3/4 of a mile directly away from us.
At least.
And it was still with the price tag on it, was sitting right in the middle of the putting green.
Wow.
And we're just like, that's not to tell of the other thing that was on one of the greens that we found. But similar to Kyle, we come in here and the whole place was brown, with the exception of the highest elevations of the course, which there isn't many on this course. But you could see it was just bright green amongst a sea of brown. We had one spot over on number one, right next to the green. There was like a foot high of green grass, and everything else was brown. There was debris everywhere. And there was a propane tank, like a 100-gallon propane tank that had floated from somebody's house and was sat on one green. Yeah. And it was just, even now I'm just like, I try and forget about it.
Yeah.
I see it all so much now.
Well, did you take a lot of photos?
I did, but I stopped.
And you don't want to look at them, right?
No, I don't. When I'm going back through my photos, my wife say, "Hey, have you got a photograph of this day?" And I'm going, and I start seeing the hurricane ones. I'm just like, no, I don't. And it was depressing that the devastation was so total that I couldn't initially wrap my head around what we were going to do. Luckily, that first trip out was only a couple hours, and we were only out here for a few hours, and it was just game planning on what was going on. We took a look at maintenance, and we brought the mechanic out with us, and I was just like, I don't know what to do with all this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, tools, everything, the whole place was just trashed. In fact, we lost one of the side walls of the building was in the mangroves at the back. The garage door was inside the building rather than in front of the building. We had a big oak tree that covered our fuel tank area. That was down in the middle of the wash pad, and it was just like, we don't know what to do. We took a walk around a golf course. Actually picked up some abandoned bikes and rode around a golf course. Plenty of abandoned bikes out here, and I got told at one point a few weeks later that I was being very negative about it, but I was just like, I don't know where to start.
Yeah.
And that was the problem. It was just not knowing where to go.
That seems natural, though, that just the overwhelming nature of how do you tackle something that significant, that large? How do you?
Right.
And I'm sure at some point you developed, hey, we'll have small victories along the way. We'll celebrate those. We'll have some goals. But how did you? So your course, Roy, did not. You ultimately made the decision that we're going to redo the golf course as a result of the storm, or just as something that needed to be done. I think you said the last time it had been redone was in the 90s.
Yeah, there'd been talk for a while about doing some renovations. We regrassed the greens in 2016, but these greens are now almost 30-year-old USGA greens. And so we'd been talking about potentially redoing the greens in a couple of years, upgrading the irrigation system. We were still old hydraulic irrigation out here.
Right.
Pump station needed to be redone. So there was a lot that was on the menu to be done in the next few years. So this kind of accelerated the program. But when we started to really get down to it and talk about it, we were kind of isolated in our thinking about the golf course, not realizing the owners also have 4 hotels, 2 strip malls, an outlet mall off the island. So they had much bigger things going on.
Sure.
And because I'm here spending everybody's money. I'm just like, I'm going to buy this, we're going to buy this. We ordered $1 million worth of equipment, blah, blah, blah. And then suddenly realizing that maybe not all of that's going to happen. So the original decision was we were just going to try and grow in what was here. We managed to keep the greens alive. Surprisingly enough, Tiff Eagle will survive inundation by salt water. Mm. We were out here with water tankers. We were hand watering the greens every day with fresh water we had one hose pipe that worked. So we're going around and we're just hand watering the greens, keeping those alive. Everything else, we were like, you know what, it's Bermuda, it'll come back. Not a big deal. What it was going to be like when it came back was a different story. Because initially we walk out there and I'm like, hey, you know what, salt water makes a really good weed killer. Because all the crabgrass around was dead. I'm like, this is really good. If I can get the Bermuda grass to come back before the weeds start regrowing, I'll be in good shape.
Yeah.
But our biggest issue was water. We're 100% effluent, and my pump station was down. It had been totally trashed. And obviously the city's not sending any effluent water out, no pump station to pump. That's when we paused for a couple of months, kept the greens going, and then the decision eventually came down, let's go ahead and regrass. Let's fix the irrigation system, do it correctly, and let's regrass, and let's go with something that can handle the salt conditions, hence the paspalum. But yeah, it was just like, that was driven by the water issue, more than anything, the paspalum. Our lakes here, we're 1 year post-storm. These lakes are still almost 24,000 parts per million sodium.
Wow.
So it's still almost seawater. FGCU, the local university, they've been doing the studies on these lakes. They're telling me a couple of years before they're back to normal. And normal's briny for us anyway.
Sure. Wow.
Yeah.
Kyle, did you ever face any questions like that? Was it just a matter, we're going to be able to clean up, just it's going to be a matter of how long it's going to take?
Yeah, so we converted from Bermuda to Seashore Paspalum in 2005. And we knew that it would be a really good grass in a situation of inundation. And I can tell you that after the storm, we were the greenest thing on the island. So it handled it very well. What was interesting is after the storm, everything that had gotten inundated with water was really good. But we had, like I said earlier, we probably only had about 3/4 of our course go underwater. The areas that weren't just got extremely dry really quick because it got hot. It rained about a week after the storm. It rained for a couple days. And then we went through a very dry period. We were only at 14 inches of rain for the entire year, just up to a few weeks ago.
Wow.
So we've been through it. Following the storm, we went through a long drought here in Southwest Florida. But no, there were no questions after the storm whether or not we were going to be able to come back. As a matter of fact, we were able to reopen the golf course on January 3rd.
Wow.
So the storm came in September 28th. On January the 3rd, we opened. Now, we opened with probably, I would say, 3 to 4 acres of not acceptable turf. Or I don't even know how to call it turf at that point in time. But I said to them, I'm like, look, we can open. And you're going to have to understand that we're not opening to the standards that we normally have.
Yeah.
But I'll give you good greens. I'll give you good tees. I'll give you decent fairways. And the roughs, all bets are off.
Yeah.
Because in those areas, a lot of those areas struggled more than others. But so we just knew that we were going to have to make it through the season last year, and Roy went through this too. See, Roy's play revolves around visitors as well as members here in the community. My play revolves around members.
Yeah.
And a lot of the members' homes, many of the members' homes were impacted greatly on the beach and on Captiva, which is an island just north of us, as well as in our sanctuary community. So we probably had, I'm going to say 30 to 40% of our normal membership even around. So a busy day for us last season was 50 to 60 rounds of golf. That was a busy day. Very few tournaments, if anything, and I think 2 events the whole year. So we opened and said, we want to give you a golf course. And then knowing that this summer was going to be critical for us to go in and really get things fixed.
Yeah.
The club, our club ended up investing quite a bit into the golf shop, rehabbing, getting a whole new cart fleet, a lot of other items beyond golf maintenance. I did not have to replace equipment. You could see the water line on the tires and the equipment in our facility. Literally now, you'll see a whole lot of pieces of equipment running around that the rims are half rusted.
Yeah.
Because right where the water was is an perfect rust line. But I did not have it nearly as bad as Roy or the folks over at Sanibel Island Golf Club. So I feel very fortunate for that. So for us, it wasn't really a question of, we didn't have to make that choice. We didn't have to make the same choice they had to make. And Roy and I were conversing the whole time. What's going on there? What's going on here? And I felt for them hard because, like I said, we live right over there, and I knew that the impact was much stronger here.
Yeah. How did the community of superintendents, the golf community here on the island, come together afterwards? I know you all had your own issues to deal with, but I'm sure that kind of support was just, I imagine it ranged from, you can borrow this piece of equipment, or, why don't you just yell at me for about 20 minutes to get it off your chest, that kind of stuff. How big a deal was that to get through what you guys were experiencing?
I'll take the credit, and I'm trying. No, what I tried to do was, we're all struggling in our own way. And we're all struggling in our own way because it really felt like and it still feels like that now, even you're really trying to reestablish what you had. You're trying to get back to that point. So I reached out to these guys. I'm like, look, we need to go out and have dinner and have a couple of drinks and just lay it out there. I kept on bugging these guys, and finally we have gotten together on a couple of occasions on the island. David Foster, who's the superintendent at South Seas Plantation, which is on Captiva, which is at what we call Land's End, the very northern point. David's actually rebuilding their facility at the moment, and South Seas is making huge investments into that resort. And David's not here to speak. I wish he was. But we've reached out to David. We haven't been able to bring him in yet. Yeah. But myself and Roy and Chad Kithcart at Sanibel Island Golf Club, we've gotten together and had dinner on a couple of occasions and just talked about what we're going through and who needs what, where, when. And I borrowed equipment from them, and they're borrowing equipment from us. And if nothing else, like you said, just venting, calling, texting, whatever it would be, just to go through, hey, did you hear this? Or can you believe this? Or I heard this about you, or I heard this about that, or my members are there, and one of my residents was playing your place, or whatever the case would be. I heard this rumor, Roy, but we're all making progress.
Right.
We're all making progress, and I think that's good for our soul right at the moment.
Yeah, it's been, just like Kyle said, the three of us, it's a shame David never joined in with that, but those vent sessions were incredibly useful because the stress that we've had to deal with going through this, it's been, we have stressful jobs anyway. By nature, this job's stressful. You're dealing with Mother Nature all day long. But on top of it, with what we were going through, just a chance to vent and get it all off your chest with people that know what you're going through, people that can understand what you're dealing with. And I've had help along with Kyle and Chad. My old boss here, Mitch, he was great. He lent me his vehicle when both my cars were gone until I got new ones. And he was another shoulder for me just to go have a beer and say, oh my God, I'm just over this right now. And he had a bit of a calming voice, which was nice. Had quite a few calls from superintendents all around the state of Florida. people I'd never spoken to before.
Wow.
They're like, hey, I got your number from X vendor. Just want to reach out and say, hey, if you need anything, give us a shout. Obviously, it's difficult for us to try and get stuff from the other coast and bring it over here. But the fact that they were offering help was significant. Probably one of the biggest helpers for me personally here has been Wesco Turf, our local Toro vendor, and Scott Lavecchio. They've just been outstanding. From working with us, getting new equipment in, giving us loaner equipment, getting us a deal on a new irrigation system, just without a doubt, one of the best franchises and best salespeople I've ever worked with in my life. And it's that kind of thing. They were there. Scotty calls me like day one after the storm and like, what are you going to need? And he goes, we'll have it there as soon as we can get it there. So when did the bridge open? November 1, like end of October, early November. There was a truck waiting to bring some equipment over so we could at least start some semblance of maintenance on the golf course. And it was just, never having gone through a natural disaster like this before, the reach out from other people. Even on the PGA side of it, we had a lot of PGA members calling our pro saying, hey, what do you need? We're here for you. Just give us a shout. Let us know. We'll do what we can. And that was really good, because sometimes you feel a little isolated. Once you got off the island, yes, there's damage, especially Fort Myers Beach, but most of the golf courses, with the exception of a couple, were back normal business for us.
Yeah.
And I felt isolated a little bit over here, and so the reach out from vendors and from other superintendents around the state has been fantastic. It really helped me feel that we could make it through this, because there was points at the beginning there I was like,
yeah.
And what made it even worse was the day before the storm, the Tuesday, I received an offer of a job up in Jacksonville. I had interviewed up in Jacksonville the weekend before the storm. They sent me an offer down, and I was just like, I called up the HR, and I was just like, in good conscience, leave them. My owners have been good. The owners here at the Dunes have been really good to me through the years. Looking back, my wife yells at me all the time about it. And I've been told by plenty of people that I should have just taken that run.
Your moment.
Well,
but
think of the memories.
And I think I said to Kyle and Chad, I'm like, at the end of the day, if I can somehow drag this thing out and get it done and get it back into shape, one, it'll be a personal achievement for me, and two, it should help my career further down the road if I make it through this far.
Well, yeah, that's the thing.
We've still got some ways to go yet. But.
Yeah, you brought up something really important. I didn't bring that up earlier, but I had someone text me and say, hey, I've got food, water, and a boat.
Yeah.
And my response was, boat? Because I boated around the area for years, but I didn't have a boat at the moment. So I'm like, boat. So literally within 48 hours of the storm, I had a boat lined up. So I was boating from Cape Coral to Sanibel back and forth. If I wasn't staying on the island, I had a boat. I was bringing employees over. I was bringing vendors over. I was bringing electricians over to work on things. I was bringing my neighbors over to look at their homes for the first time.
Yeah.
And that was a vendor, TJ Shine. And for him to give me that boat was like my lifeline.
Yeah.
To be living on the island and then being able to go over and stay in George Bowling's place, tied up. And so we were bringing fuel over because there was nowhere to get fuel here on the island. So it was a lifeline. It was amazing to have that opportunity. So the outpouring of support that we got,
it was phenomenal.
It
really was
huge. And then people were there to help. And then I think you learn to be very resourceful very quickly. And whether it's you in a situation where you didn't even have any equipment and you're figuring out, at least making some decisions and reviewing and understanding what's going on, or even with us having equipment but not really having a lot of resource, not having the need to prepare for golfers, but how can we continue to get better every day so I can give them a season this season?
Right.
So you just figure out a way to be resourceful. But I don't think you can do that unless you're actually put in that situation, because your brain's whatever. Yeah. It's normal.
Right.
These things are normal. And as soon as you say you have no water, you have no power, oh, by the way, you have 100 acres of grass. You go, what am I going to do? Exactly. So you just become very resourceful very quick, and then you don't know really how you do it. It just happens.
that support you guys talk about, I mean, that's evident throughout the industry. There's the brotherhood, sisterhood, as more and more women get into the business. But just the communal aspect of golf course management and the support that you get. I'm sure there are other industries where that's commonplace. In my industry, in journalism, maybe not so much. You develop your friendships and things with people that work at other publications or whatnot, and you have good relationships. And I suppose in trying times, you are reaching out and, hey, just thinking about you, that kind of thing. But the kind of support you guys are talking about from vendors, from fellow superintendents, that kind of makes it special, and it probably is a lifeline when you guys are struggling your most. When you're in the middle of it here, and that kind of stuff can be pretty invaluable. So that's great to hear. Listen, we've taken up a lot of time. I appreciate you guys doing this. I want to end with maybe some good news. Okay. Roy, what are you talking about? What are you guys looking at here in terms of when you're going to be able to get this thing open? The clubhouse looks great, by the way. I feel bad that I'm in here before some of your members, but what are you looking at in terms of when you're going to be able to have people hitting shots out here?
So we're planning on opening the first 9 holes around the first week of December. Obviously, depending on how things go. They were the first ones grassed. We're pretty close on the front. The back's going to take a little longer. We've still got 4 holes to grass. They're doing some final grading out there today. They're hoping to get the last of the sod coming in early next week, and then possibly sprigging the last 4 at the end of next week. Gives me 3 to 4 months to get them in shape to open the back 9, hopefully mid-January. With it being an El Nino year, a lot of that's up in the air right now. But as you can see out the window, the stuff that's down and growing is doing pretty well. So that's the plan. Membership we've worked reciprocals with a local club in town for the members. Tennis is back up and running, so the members have been in and out tennis. We have the pool open for members as well. We're getting close to having the clubhouse itself and restaurant open as soon as we get the landscaping hopefully done in the next 30 days out the front, at least to get some kind of normalcy back in our routines again. And then, like I said, golf course, as soon as it's available, essentially it'll be getting opened.
Oh yeah, and I'm sure you will have a full tee sheet once they're
I'm pretty sure it's going to be busy. Yeah.
Do you, Kyle? Do you feel how close to normal do you feel right now, 1 year removed at the sanctuary?
I think I told someone this morning. I had a member actually came to visit and went on the golf course with me. I think we'll be about 90%. I really do. And then that's because there's quite a bit of landscaping work around the golf course that's still going to be waning. It's going to be something we're going to have to work on during the season, which is fine. But I think we're going to be about 90%. Turf-wise, we should be pretty solid. We hosted a Calusa event last week out there, and I wasn't happy with it, but it was close.
Yeah.
We're expecting about 70% of our normal membership. Okay. That's what our surveys and everything say. And we don't really do a lot of outside play, but we do some fundraising, community events for fundraising and things like that. We do have on the docket this year. Last year, of course, we didn't.
Right.
So we're going to be pretty close to normal. And I'm just hoping for some really good weather as we push through this last month. October's summer here.
Yeah.
Don't let anybody fool you.
No, it's summer.
Florida,
let me tell
it's
you.
Summer. I know you're sweating. I saw you sweating earlier.
Oh yeah.
But we can grow some really good grass in October.
Yes,
and Roy's counting on that for the grow in. I'm counting on that to really finish to get ready for the season. But I think we're going to have a good season. I'm much happier today on this beautiful day than I was September 28th a year ago.
Yep.
And no, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a little bit of normalcy, which I think we need.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super appreciative that you guys were willing to share your stories. I'm sure it's something you'd rather not have gone through, but it does certainly put you in a unique class of superintendents who've had to deal with this. And we didn't talk a ton about it, but I know there's personal things you have to balance. In addition to that, you have staff members who have their own personal challenges, who want to help you on the golf course, but maybe they've lost a home or they've lost vehicles like you both did and things like that. And it's hard we talked beforehand. I'm a Midwesterner by heart and have lived there my whole life, and so familiar with tornadoes and severe weather and those sorts of things. But those can be totally devastating. But they're not just as widespread as this, where just for up and down the coast, there were folks that went through things that you guys went through. Hats off to you. I'm not wearing a hat right now, but I'd take it. So, all right, one fun stuff. We're going to finish off with some of our final shots. When you do have a chance to get away from the golf course, Roy, what's your favorite thing to do?
Cycling.
Okay, cycling.
Cycling.
Kyle?
Yeah, interestingly, I did a lot of cycling during COVID. Roy and I are sharing notes about cycling. I'm probably not as strong as he is, but I love cycling. But we also love being on the water down here in South Florida.
Yeah, absolutely.
On the boat. Yep.
I just bought a new gravel bike, trying to get myself back into shape a little bit.
Nice.
So it's been.
I finally rebuilt my road bike and got it out. I took my first ride out in a year last weekend, and not too bad. Average 17 mile an hour over 25 miles wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
Not bad for a 50-some-year-old.
Well,
this guy's a machine. 17 miles an hour. I'm doing like 13. I'm lucky.
I'm in the middle. I'm about 15, but I think my bike is governed to 14.8 at the moment. So I'm trying to figure that out.
I'm going to use that.
But I did 31. I did 31 miles on Sunday, so I'll do 30 miles on Sundays, and I try to do 20. I'm 70 miles a week right now.
That's good. Yeah.
So far so good. But the island is a great place to bike. So, come to Sanibel and bike.
Yeah.
Everybody, come to
There's
Sanibel
some
and
great
bike.
routes on this island again.
Yeah.
After driving some of the roads, I think you might want a bike. You might get around a little quicker on some of these.
That.
We talked about this before, Roy. I was going to say college or pro football, where your loyalty is saying, but there's another kind of football that I think you also are.
Yep, lifelong Sheffield Wednesday fan, for those that know. As far as American sports, I am a Chicago fan for my sins, both Cubs and Bears. So I'm having a bit of a tough time right now.
Yeah, sorry about the Chiefs.
That was rough.
Sunday.
Yeah, that's a tough question for me because I'm really not a huge sports fan. I'll follow a good game.
Yeah.
As much as I don't want that to sound cheesy.
Yeah.
But we always find something to do on Sundays. I was a huge NASCAR fan. A good friend of mine, David Ruderman, raced for Waltrip for a number of years, and we grew up in little towns, Zephyr Hills. So I spent a lot of time. So I would say as a sports fan, that was probably one of the, if you want to call it a motorsport, a sport.
Yeah.
But as far as Sunday football, we're either on the boat or we're at the pool or we're doing something out and about and enjoying this place.
And you do. That's the beauty of living here is you do get that opportunity to borderline year-round outdoor activities. Bucket list golf course that you want to play, that you would just love to play. Kyle.
I would say Pebble Beach. It's just so amazing looking, and I've had several people that I know that have played there that have just said they were just awestruck from the first moment. And I've got a lot of family in California. Our family's pretty much based in either New York or California, so I'll make it out there one day.
Yeah. How about you, Roy?
Mine's actually a little closer to my home, or actually where my parents live. I would love to play Royal Dornoch.
Okay.
Never had the chance. I lived 15 minutes from it, but never got a chance to play it, and it's a classic.
Yeah. Old school. I've not been there. I had a chance to be at Pebble Beach a number of times, and it is spectacular. I've never been able to play. They've always tended to be the U.S. Opens or Women's Opens when I'm there. So
you haven't qualified. You haven't qualified. Take it.
This close.
Just so
this
close. So close.
And the last question: what are you doing if Jim Cantori from the Weather Channel shows up on the island? Are you pushing him back? Are you running?
That was, funny enough, that was one of the rumors that when everybody goes, "Where's Jim Cantori?" And as soon as the rumor came down that he's in Fort Myers, I'm like, shoot. Yeah, if I hear he's back here again, I'm out. I'm done.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna figure out a way to don like a Weather Channel jacket and just stand right there with him and just take on the storm with Jim. That would be awesome. We've been watching him for 30 years, taking on storms out there. No, I'm right there with him. I'm talking about the golf course and what's going on.
That's right.
And
hey, you got a great view. Come on.
Maybe we're chipping and putting on the putting green, waiting for it to come in. But I would really look forward to meeting him. My father-in-law was actually a recent retired weatherman.
Oh, really?
Bob Riggio.
Okay.
In Rapid City, South Dakota.
All right.
Shout out to Bob, lifelong weatherman who recently retired from an NBC affiliate up there.
Great.
And I hope that if it ever happens again, Bob is here with me.
Yeah.
And he can experience a storm. If it ever does happen again, we'll have him come down.
I had one day leaving GCSA headquarters in Lawrence. It was severe weather in the forecast. I dilly-dallied around, and suddenly I was looking at the skies, and you guys know how that is. And you're like, I may have waited too long, and I pulled onto the highway leaving Lawrence, and right in front of me was one of these storm-chasing tank kind of things that Reed Timmer and his crew. It's literally right in front of me. I have photos on my phone of this thing, and I called my wife and I said, we might want to batten down the hatches. And so I just hightailed it out of there because I'm like, if that guy's driving where I am, I'm in the wrong place. But again, guys, thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed the conversation. I think the listeners will too. Best of luck with everything down here, driving around. It's nice to see things coming back. I was, again, as I told you, Roy, Kyle, before we started, I was a little taken back by how much I could still see from it a year ago, but you guys are on the road to recovery. There are a lot of people pulling for you, and we'll hope that all these, the rest of the hurricane season just steers different. They can keep going out to sea like they've been doing the last 2 or 3 weeks. So, Roy Jones, Kyle Sweet, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it.
Well, that does it for episode 56 of the GCSAA podcast. A very big thank you to both Roy Jones and Kyle Sweet for their willingness to share their stories and relive some honestly painful memories from Hurricane Ian, and for being such awesome hosts during my day on Sanibel. It was an eye-opening visit for a lot of reasons, and I appreciate both of them being so open about what they went through last September and the fits and starts they've experienced on the long road to recovery there on Sanibel Island. As always, lots on the to-do list when it comes to future episodes of the GCSAA podcast, including plans for some live recordings of this and other superintendent-hosted podcasts on the GCSAA podcast stage during the GCSAA conference and trade show in Phoenix in January. For now, though, we'll say goodbye with a thank you to our podcast editor, Evan Shapiro, to the folks at Envu for their ongoing sponsorship of the podcast, to the GCSAA Board of Directors and all my coworkers at Association Headquarters in Lawrence, Kansas. And of course, my thanks to each of you for subscribing, downloading, and listening. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll catch up again soon on the next episode of the GCSAA podcast.